Mafia boss's blind date vanishes, only for him to discover her desperate secret. A single mother's tears will shatter his cold world, forcing him to choose between his empire and a love he never saw coming. If you're new here, subscribe and comment your location. Now let's begin. The world of Don Marco Valenti was built on two things: money and fear. He had more of both than any man in the city, but tonight, sitting in his dark office, all that power felt empty. The silence was too loud. He looked at the family photos on his desk, his parents, his sister, all gone. He was alone in a fortress of his own making. His phone buzzed. It was his consigliere, David. The meeting with the Italians is set for tomorrow, Don Valenti, and your 8 o'clock with the pianist was confirmed. Ilara. She seemed nice on the phone, Marco grunted. A blind date. David's idea, of course. Find someone normal, Marco, someone who doesn't know your name. The thought was both tempting and terrifying. What would he even talk about? Business meant bullets and blood money. At 7:55 p.m, his personal phone, the one only a few people had, rang. It was an unknown number. He answered. A soft, shaky voice came through. Is this Mark? That was the name he used for this, just Mark. Yes, he said, his voice deeper than he intended. This is Ilara. We were supposed to meet. I am so sorry, but I have to cancel. Something has come up. She sounded like she was holding back tears. Are you all right? He asked, the Don in him sensing weakness, but the man feeling a pull. It's fine. It's nothing. I'm sorry to bother you. The line went dead. Marco stared at the phone. A normal man would be disappointed, maybe a little annoyed, but Marco was not a normal man. He was a hunter, and something was wrong with his prey. He called David. The pianist cancelled. I want her address. Now. Marco, is that wise? She's a civilian. Now, David. 20 minutes later, Marco stood in the shadows of a run-down diner's parking lot. His men were parked nearby, watching. And there she was, Ilara. She was even more beautiful than the photo David had shown him, with long dark hair and kind eyes. But now those eyes were red and swollen. She was sitting on the curb next to an old, beat-up car, her head in her hands, crying like her heart was breaking. Next to her, a little boy, no more than 5, hugged her arm. Don't cry, Mommy. It'll be okay, the boy said, his own voice trembling. That small voice, trying to be brave, hit Marco harder than any threat from a rival family. He saw a piece of paper clutched in Ilara's hand. It fluttered in the wind. His eyes, trained to see everything, read the bold letters at the top. Final eviction notice. He took a step forward out of the shadows. His expensive shoes crunched on the gravel. Ilara looked up, startled. She quickly wiped her tears, pulling her son closer. Can I help you? She asked, her voice tight with fear. Marco stopped a few feet away. He made himself look small, harmless. Ilara, I'm Mark. We were supposed to meet tonight. Her eyes widened in horror and embarrassment. Oh my God, you're Mark. How did you find me? I was worried when you called, he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. He nodded at the paper. Bad news? She looked down, fresh tears falling. It's nothing. I'll handle it. The little boy looked up at Marco with big, curious eyes. The bad men are making us leave our house. A cold knot tightened in Marco's stomach. Bad men? Just a debt, Ilara whispered, hugging her son. My husband, he passed away last year. He borrowed money from some people. I didn't know how much. Now they want it all back with interest. I can't pay. I work 2 jobs. I play piano at a hotel on weekends. It's not enough. They said if I don't pay by Friday, we're out. What's the name of the company? Marco asked, his voice dangerously calm. Omni Financial, she said. The air left Marco's lungs. Omni Financial. It was one of his. A front for his loan sharking operation, run by his most ruthless lieutenant, Paulie. His own organization was terrorizing this woman, this gentle, beautiful woman and her brave little boy. The system he built, the machine that made him rich, was crushing them. He looked at the boy. "What's your name, buddy?" "Luca," the boy said softly. "Luca. That's a strong name." Marco looked back at Ilara. "Let me help you." She shook her head fiercely. "No, no thank you. I don't take charity. We'll be fine. We'll find somewhere." "This isn't charity," Marco said, the idea forming in his mind instantly. "It's a business offer. I own a few buildings. I have an empty apartment. You can stay there, rent-free for the first 6 months, until you get back on your feet." Ilara stared at him, confused. "Why would you do that? You don't even know me." Marco gave her a small, sad smile. "Let's just say I know what it's like to have a bad day, and I have the power to fix this one. For you and for Luca." He could see the war in her eyes, pride versus desperation, the need to protect her son, won. "Where is this apartment?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "It's in the North End. A safe neighborhood, good schools." He pulled out his wallet and handed her a plain black business card. It only had a phone number on it. "That's my private number. Call it tomorrow at 10. A man named David will meet you here and take you to see it." He didn't wait for her to agree. He just nodded, gave Luca a little wave, and walked back to his waiting car. As his driver pulled away, he took out his other phone, the one for business. He dialed Paulie's number. The line picked up. "Boss? What's up?" "Paulie, the Omni financial file on a woman named Ilara, wife of a deceased borrower. I want it gone, wiped clean." "All of it." There was a pause on the other end. Paulie was confused. "Boss? That's a $40,000 debt. The VIG alone is—" "I don't care about the money, Paulie. I said wipe it clean. And tell your collectors, if anyone so much as looks at this woman or her son, I will personally remove their eyes. Do you understand me?" The silence was heavy. "Yeah, boss. I understand." Marco ended the call. He leaned back in the leather seat. He had just started a war. He knew it. Paulie would not let this go easily. Questioning his orders, especially over a woman, was a sign of weakness. And in Marco's world, weakness was death. But as he pictured Ilara's tear-streaked face and Luca's brave eyes, he knew he didn't care. For the first time in a long time, he felt something other than cold power. He felt a purpose. The next day, David called. "I met with Ilara. She and the boy are in the apartment." She was very grateful. "But Marco, Paulie is asking questions. He's not happy." "Let him be unhappy," Marco said, staring out his window at the city he owned. "I want you to get her a job, something easy. At that little bookshop she likes. Pay the owner triple what he usually makes. Tell him it's a grant. I want her life to be easy, David." "Marco, who is this woman to you?" Marco didn't have an answer, not one he could say out loud. A week later, Marco accidentally ran into Ilara at the bookshop. She was arranging books on a shelf, a small smile on her face. Luca was sitting in a corner reading a picture book. "Mark," she said, her face lighting up, "what are you doing here?" "Just looking for a book," he said, feeling like a foolish teenager. Luca ran over. "Mark, Mommy has a new job, and we have a big TV now." Marco laughed, a real genuine laugh. He spent the next hour with them, talking about simple things. He learned that Luca wanted a dog. He learned that Ilara missed playing piano for people, not just for money. That night, he sent a piano to her apartment. A beautiful, baby grand. The note simply said, "For the music." He started seeing them regularly. He would take Luca to the park. He would have dinner with Ilara. He told her he was in import-export, a vague term she accepted. With every moment, the lie he was living grew bigger. He was two men. Don Valenti, the ruthless king, and Mark, the kind man who was falling in love with a pianist and her son. But the other world was closing in. Paulie came to him at his office, his face hard. "Boss, we need to talk about the woman, Ilara." "The boys are talking. They say you've gone soft." Marco stood up slowly, his eyes turning to ice. "Say that again, Paulie." Paulie didn't back down. "The Russians are getting bold. They see you playing house. They think you're distracted. This woman is a liability. You need to handle this, or I will. Marco moved faster than a snake. He had Paulie by the throat, slamming him against the wall. You will never go near her. You will never even say her name again. Do you understand? If you do, I will burn your whole world to the ground. You and your crew will be nothing but ash. He let go. Paulie gasped for air, his eyes filled with hate. The line was drawn. That weekend, Marco took Ilara and Luca on a picnic. It was a perfect day. For a few hours, he almost forgot who he was. As Luca ran after butterflies, Ilara turned to him. Mark, who are you? Really? He looked at her, his heart pounding. What do you mean? The apartment, the job, the piano, it's too much. It's like magic. Normal men don't have this kind of magic. He took her hand. I'm just a man, Ilara. A man who wants to keep you and Lucas safe. She searched his eyes and he saw the trust there. It terrified him. Later, as he drove them home, his phone buzzed. It was David. He ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Something was wrong. He dropped them off at their apartment building, his mind already elsewhere. I have to go. I'll call you tomorrow. Ilara kissed his cheek. Be safe, Mark. As soon as their apartment door closed, he called David back. What? Marco, it's Paulie. He's made his move. He's gone to the Russians. He's told them everything about Ilara, about Luca. He says you're unfit to lead. They're coming for you, and they're coming for them. Marco's blood ran cold. He looked up at the window of Ilara's apartment. The warm yellow light glowed. He had brought the storm right to their door. He spoke into the phone, his voice as cold as steel. Gather everyone, the ones who are still loyal. Meet me at the warehouse. Tonight, we end this. He ended the call and took a deep breath. The two lives had collided. Mark was gone. Only Don Valenti remained, and he had a war to fight. Marco didn't wait. He slammed his car door and ran back into the building, taking the stairs 2 at a time. He couldn't call her. He had to see her face to know they were safe for just a few more minutes. He knocked on the door, his breath coming hard. Ilara opened it, surprised. Mark, what's wrong? He stepped inside, locking the door behind him. Luca was on the floor with toy cars. The scene was so peaceful it hurt. Listen to me, Marco said, his voice low and urgent. You and Luca need to pack a bag. Right now, just one, only the things you really need. Her face went pale. What? Why? I can't explain, but you are not safe here, not anymore. I have to take you somewhere else. Mark, you're scaring me. Tell me what's going on. Her voice was rising, edged with panic. Luca looked up, sensing the fear. Mommy? Marco knelt down in front of the boy. Luca, buddy, we're going on a little adventure, like spies. We have to be very quiet and very quick. Can you help your mummy pack? Luca's eyes went wide, but he nodded, a serious look on his little face. Ilara grabbed Marco's arm. No, no more secrets. Who are you? Tell me the truth right now. He looked into her eyes. He saw the trust he was about to shatter. My name is Marco Valenti, he said quietly. People, they call me Don Valenti. The name meant nothing to her. She shook her head, confused. I'm not in import-export, Ilara. I run this city. The money your husband owed, it was owed to me. My men were the ones threatening you. He watched the understanding dawn on her face. It was like watching a light go out. The kindness in her eyes was replaced by a cold, hard fear. You? She whispered, pulling her hand back as if he were on fire. You were the bad man? All this time? I didn't know it was you. Not until that night in the parking lot. I ended the debt the second I found out. But one of my men, Paulie, he didn't like that. He's told my enemies about you. They think you're my weakness. They will use you to get to me. Tears filled her eyes, but they were tears of anger now. So this is all because of you? Our home, our safety. It was all a lie. You were just protecting your property. No, he said, his voice breaking. It was never a lie. Meeting you. It was the first real thing that has happened to me in 10 years. Please, you can hate me later, but right now, let me save you. Let me fix this. He heard the roar of motorcycles outside, then car doors slamming. They were out of time. He grabbed her shoulders. Ilara, now! They're here! A loud bang came from downstairs, the sound of the building's front door being kicked in. Ilara gasped, her maternal instinct overpowering her anger. She grabbed Luca and ran to the bedroom, throwing clothes into a bag. Marco pulled a gun from the back of his pants. He flipped the safety off. The sound was cold and final. He peered through the peephole. The hallway was empty, but he could hear heavy footsteps on the stairs. More than one man. Ilara, the fire escape. Go out the bedroom window, down the ladder. My driver, James, is in a black car at the end of the alley. Go to him. He will take you to David. He will keep you safe. What about you? She asked, clutching the bag, her body shielding Luca. I'll hold them off. I'll find you, I promise. He looked at Luca. Remember, buddy, be a spy. Be quiet for your mom. Luca nodded, his little hand gripping his mother's. Marco gave Ilara one last, long look. I am so sorry. Then he turned away, facing the door. He heard them outside whispering. He took a deep breath. Don Valenti was back. The door exploded inward, splintering off its hinges. Marco didn't hesitate. He fired twice. 2 men in leather jackets fell in the doorway. The sound was deafening in the small apartment. He could hear more men shouting downstairs. He had to lead them away from Ilara and Luca. He ran out into the hallway, shooting towards the stairs. A bullet whizzed past his head, embedding itself in the wall. He returned fire, and a man cried out, tumbling down the steps. He was a predator in his element. This was what he knew. Violence. Chaos. But his heart was pounding for a different reason. He had to give them time to escape. He fought his way down to the second-floor landing. He was a whirlwind of motion, every shot precise, every move calculated. These were Paulie's men, mixed with Russians, traitors and invaders. He saw a flash of movement from the apartment below Ilara's. A man was climbing out onto the fire escape. He was going after them. Marco leaped over the railing, landing hard on the stairs below. He grabbed the man by the back of his jacket and slammed him against the metal railing. The man grunted, and Marco shoved him over the side. He fell 2 stories with a sickening crunch. Marco looked down. He saw Ilara and Luca, halfway down, frozen in fear, looking up at him. His face was a mask of cold fury, a side of him he never wanted them to see. Go! He roared. They scrambled down the rest of the way. He saw James's car screech to a halt at the alley's mouth. The back door opened. Ilara shoved Luca in and jumped in after him. The car sped away. Relief washed over him, so powerful it made him dizzy. They were safe. That moment of distraction cost him. A searing pain exploded in his side. He'd been shot. He spun around, firing blindly, and heard a gurgle as his attacker fell. He was hit, he was bleeding, and he was surrounded. He backed into a corner, his gun held ready. There were at least 4 more men coming up the stairs. He was out of bullets. He reached for a fresh clip. Then a new sound. Sirens. Distant at first, then growing louder. The men on the stairs hesitated. They looked at each other. Police were bad for business. "Let's go!" one of them yelled. They turned and fled, leaving their dead and wounded behind. Marco slumped against the wall, clutching his side. His hand came away wet with blood. The sirens were close now. He couldn't be here when they arrived. He stumbled down the remaining stairs and out into the alley. He moved through the shadows, his vision blurring. He needed to get to David. He needed to know Ilara and Luca were okay. He found his car a block away, right where he'd left it. He fell into the driver's seat, groaning in pain. He started the engine and drove, not knowing where he was going, just away. He pulled out his phone, his fingers slipping on the blood. He called David. "David," he gasped. "Are they with you?" "Yes, Marco, they're here, they're safe. Where are you? You're hurt, I can hear it." "Paulie? He's with the Russians. He tried to take them. He shot me." "Tell me where you are. I'll send a doctor." Marco looked around, his head swimming. I'm near the old fish market. I'm pulling over. I can't drive. Stay there. I'm coming. Don't lose consciousness, Marco. Stay with me." Marco let the phone fall. He leaned his head back against the seat. The world was getting dark at the edges. He thought of Ilara's face when she realized who he was, the betrayal in her eyes. He had finally found something good, and he had destroyed it with the very darkness he was trying to escape. He closed his eyes, the pain pulling him under. David found him 20 minutes later. He and another man, a discreet doctor who asked no questions, loaded Marco into the back of another car. They took him to a safe house, a small, clean apartment in a quiet neighborhood. The doctor dug the bullet out of Marco's side. It was a through and through, a clean wound. He would live. When Marco woke up, the sun was high in the sky. He was on a cot, his side bandaged tightly. David was sitting in a chair nearby. "Ilara? Luca?" were Marco's first words. "They're in the next room, asleep. They were up all night, worried about you." Marco tried to sit up, a sharp pain making him gasp. "She hates me. She's confused and scared. But she asked about you every 5 minutes." Marco looked at the door that separated them. It felt like a mountain stood between him and that room. "Paulie?" Marco asked, his voice turning hard. "Gone to ground. He's with the Russian boss, Ivan. They think you're dead or dying. They're getting ready to move in on all our territory. They're having a meeting tonight at the warehouse by the docks to divide up your empire." A cold smile touched Marco's lips. "Good. Let them get comfortable. Then we'll pay them a visit." "You're in no condition to fight, Marco." "I don't have a choice," Marco said, his eyes fixed on the door. "This ends tonight, one way or another." Just then the bedroom door opened slowly. Luca peeked out. When he saw Marco was awake, he ran into the room and climbed onto the cot, careful not to touch his side. "You're okay," Luca said, hugging Marco's arm. Marco's tough exterior melted. He put his hand on the boy's head. "Yeah, buddy, I'm okay." Ilara stood in the doorway. She looked tired, her arms crossed over her chest. She was watching them. "Luca, come here. Don't bother him," she said, her voice flat. "He's not a bother," Marco said softly, looking at her. Luca ignored his mother for a moment. "You were so brave, Mark. You fought the bad men." Marco's heart ached. "I am the bad men, Luca." The little boy shook his head. "No, you're not. You saved us." Tears welled in Marco's eyes. He looked at Ilara, begging her to understand. David stood up. "Come on, Luca, let's go find some breakfast." He took the boy's hand and led him out, leaving Marco and Ilara alone. The silence was heavy. Ilara walked in and sat on the edge of the chair. "Is it true? What you said? You're a gangster?" "Yes," Marco said. "It's the world I was born into. It's all I've ever known. I never wanted anything else, until I saw you crying in that parking lot. You and Luca, you showed me there could be more." "So all of it was a game? The apartment, the job, the piano? Just you playing a part?" "No." The force of his word made him wince in pain. "It was the only part that was real. Being with you as Mark was the first time I felt like a human being and not a monster. I was going to tell you. I was trying to find a way out of my life for you." "By killing people? By having a war in my apartment building?" Her voice was rising, all the fear and anger pouring out. "I didn't start this war, Ilara. Paulie did. Because I showed mercy. Because I showed a heart. And in my world, that is a death sentence. I am trying to end it. To end all of it. So I can be the man you deserve." "And how do you plan to end it, Marco? With more guns? More blood?" "What other way is there?" he asked, his voice desperate. "They will never stop. They will always hunt us. The only language they understand is force." She looked at him, her eyes searching his soul. "Then you're right. You are a monster, and you always will be." She stood up and walked out of the room, closing the door softly behind her. Her words cut deeper than any bullet. He lay there staring at the ceiling, her verdict ringing in his ears. He had lost her. The one good thing. David came back in an hour later. Marco was dressed, moving stiffly, his face a mask of grim determination. "Where are they?" Marco asked. "Ilara is in the living room with Luca. She wants to leave. She says she can find her own way. Marco nodded, the pain in his heart worse than the pain in his side. Let her go if she wants, but make sure she has money. A new identity, whatever she needs to disappear. And you? David asked. I'm going to the warehouse tonight. Are the men ready? The ones who are left. They're loyal. They know Paulie betrayed you. Good. Marco walked into the living room. Ilara was holding Luca's hand, her bag packed. David will give you whatever you need, Marco said, his voice empty. You can go anywhere. You'll be safe. I promise. Thank you, she said, not meeting his eyes. Luca pulled away from his mother and ran to Marco, wrapping his small arms around Marco's legs. Don't go, Mark. Marco knelt down, hugging the boy tightly. I have to, Luca. I have to make sure the bad men never bother you or your mommy again. Will you come back? Luca whispered. Marco looked over Luca's head at Ilara. Her face was unreadable. I don't know, buddy, he said honestly. He stood up, gave Ilara one last long look, and walked out the door with David. He didn't look back. He couldn't. The night was cold and damp at the docks. The warehouse was old and dark, but light and noise came from inside. Laughter. They were celebrating his death. Marco stood in the shadows with David and 6 of his most trusted men. They were armed and ready. Remember, Marco said, his voice a low growl. Paulie is mine. They moved like ghosts towards a side door. Marco kicked it open. The scene inside froze. Paulie, Ivan the Russian, and about 20 of their men were standing around a table covered in maps of Marco's territory. Bottles of vodka were everywhere. Paulie's face went white. You're supposed to be dead. I'm hard to kill, Marco said, raising his gun. You made a mistake, Paulie. You threatened my family. Ivan laughed, a loud, booming sound. Family? You have no family, Valenti. You have money and power. And now we have it. The shooting started. It was chaos. The warehouse echoed with gunfire. Marco's men were outnumbered, but they were fighting with the fury of the betrayed. Marco moved through the fight like a demon. He was not a man anymore. He was vengeance. He shot 2 of Ivan's men, then another. He was heading straight for Paulie. Paulie saw him coming and turned to run. Marco tackled him from behind, sending them both crashing onto the concrete floor. They wrestled for the gun. Paulie was strong, fueled by hate and fear. You're a fool, Marco, Paulie spat. For a woman. You threw it all away for a woman. No, Marco grunted, finally wrenching the gun away and pressing it under Paulie's chin. I found something worth more than all of it. He pulled the trigger. The fight was almost over. Ivan was backing away towards a rear exit, shooting wildly. Marco got to his feet, his eyes locked on the Russian. You lose, Ivan, Marco yelled across the warehouse. Ivan smiled, a cruel, ugly smile. Do I? He raised his hand. He wasn't holding a gun. He was holding a small black remote. Some of my men are not here, Valenti, Ivan shouted. They are paying a visit to your little pianist. If I don't call them in the next 5 minutes, they have orders to kill her and the boy. Marco's blood ran cold. He had been outsmarted. He looked at David, who was staring back in horror. They had lost. The sound of a single gunshot echoed through the warehouse. Ivan staggered, a look of surprise on his face. The remote fell from his hand. He collapsed, dead. Behind him, from the shadows of the rear exit, a figure emerged. It was Ilara. She was holding a smoking gun, her hands shaking, her face pale but determined. Marco stared, unable to speak. He ran to her, kicking the remote away from Ivan's body. What? How? He stammered. She dropped the gun, her whole body trembling. David, he told me where you were. He said you were going to die. I couldn't let that happen. Not after everything. You could have been killed, Marco said, grabbing her arms. So could you, she cried. I was so angry at you, but then I realized the monster wouldn't have risked everything to save us. The monster wouldn't have cried when he thought he lost us. Luca was right. You're not the bad man. She looked at the carnage around them, the bodies, the blood. But this has to end, Marco. This life, it has to end tonight. For good. Marco looked at the men who were left. They were his, but they were also part of the problem. He looked at David, who gave him a slow, respectful nod. "It ends now," Marco said, his voice loud and clear in the quiet warehouse. "The Valenti family is finished. It's over." He took Ilara's hand. It was covered in blood, but he held it tight. He had lost his empire, but as he looked into her eyes, he knew he had found something much, much better. He had found his way home. Marco didn't let go of Ilara's hand. He led her out of the warehouse, away from the blood and the bodies. David and his men followed, their faces grim. They all knew nothing would ever be the same. Outside, the cold night air felt clean. Marco stopped and turned to Ilara. Her whole body was shaking. "You saved my life," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I killed a man," she whispered, staring at her hands. "I killed a man, Marco." He pulled her into a careful hug, mindful of his wounded side. "You saved our lives. You saved Luca's life. You are the bravest person I have ever known." They drove back to the safe house in silence. Luca was asleep on the couch, a blanket pulled up to his chin. When Ilara saw him safe and peaceful, she finally broke down. She sank to her knees beside the couch and sobbed, the horror and the relief crashing over her all at once. Marco let her cry. He knew there were no words. David brought her a cup of tea and then left them alone, saying he would handle the clean-up. For the next week, they lived in a strange, quiet bubble. Marco's wound healed. Ilara barely spoke. She would cook meals, help Luca with his toys, but her eyes were far away. Marco gave her space. He knew she was processing a world she never knew existed. One evening, after Luca was in bed, she finally spoke to him. Really spoke. "What happens now, Marco?" He was sitting at the small kitchen table. He looked up from the coffee he was staring into. "That's up to you." "Is it really over? The family?" "Yes," he said, and he meant it. "I've dissolved it. I've given up all my territories. The men who stayed loyal have been paid off and sent away. There is no more Don Valenti." "And the money?" she asked, her voice soft. "The money you got from all that?" "Most of it was dirty. I can't keep it. It's blood money." He took a deep breath. "I've set up a fund for the families of people who were hurt by my business. People like you. It won't fix anything, but it's a start." Ilara looked at him for a long time. She saw the tired lines around his eyes. She saw the man who had fought a war to protect her and then ended his own empire for a chance at peace. "What will you do?" she asked. "I don't know," he admitted. "I have a little money put away. Enough to start over. Somewhere new. Maybe I'll open a garage. I was good with cars a long time ago." He gave her a sad, small smile. "But I'll understand if you don't want to be part of that. David can take you anywhere you want to go. You can have a fresh start, without me." She didn't answer. She just stood up and went to check on Luca. The next day, Marco was packing his one small bag. He had decided to leave. He would give Ilara the safe house, the money, everything. It was the only way she could be free to choose a life without the shadow of his past hanging over her. He heard a soft knock on the door frame. It was Ilara. "Where are you going?" she asked. "It's time for me to go," he said, not looking at her. "You and Luca need a real life. A safe, normal life. You can't have that with me." "A normal life?" she said, a hint of her old strength returning to her voice. "Marco, I held a gun and killed a man to protect you. My life hasn't been normal since the night I met you." He finally looked at her. There were tears in her eyes, but she was smiling a little. "I was so angry," she said, "but all I could think about that night in the warehouse was losing you, and I realized, the man I fell for, Mark, he was real. He was the best part of you trying to get out. I don't want you to leave. We don't want you to leave." Just then, Luca ran into the room and hugged Marco's legs. "Don't go, Mark, please!" Marco's resolve shattered. He picked up the little boy, holding him tight. He looked at Ilara over Luca's shoulder. "Are you sure? My past will always be there." Our pasts are what they are, she said, walking over to him. She put a hand on his cheek. But we can choose our future. Together. 6 months later, they were in a small town by the ocean. The air smelled of salt, not city smoke. Marco Valenti was now Mark Vale. He used his clean money to buy a small auto repair shop. He came home every night with grease on his hands, tired but happy. Ilara gave piano lessons to the children in the town. The sound of music filled their small, bright house. One evening, Marco came home to find Luca waiting for him on the front steps. "Dad, you're home!" Luca yelled, running to him. The word "dad" still sent a jolt of pure joy through Marco's heart. He swung the boy up into his arms. Inside, Ilara was finishing dinner. She turned and smiled as he walked in. She was wearing a simple dress and her eyes were calm. The fear was gone. After dinner, Luca was in the backyard playing with the dog Marco had finally gotten for him. Marco and Ilara sat on the porch, watching the sun set over the water. He took her hand. "Are you happy, Ilara?" She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm safe. Luca is safe. And I'm with you. That's more than happy. That's everything." He kissed her forehead. The war was over. The empire was dust. But as he sat there holding the woman he loved, listening to his son laugh, Marco Valenti knew he had won the only thing that ever truly mattered. He had finally come home. Did Ilara make the right choice giving a Mafia boss a second chance? Could you? Let us know where you're watching from and what you would have done in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories where love battles a dangerous past.